Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to a special Sunday edition of the Watchman Newscast. Not our usual Watchman production. I'm just coming to you down and dirty today from my phone, but we've got important breaking news for you out of the world's most strategic and chaotic region, the Middle East, that we wanted to bring to you. And we know at the end of the day, you are here for the content first and foremost. So let's get right into it. We know that the war continues to rage between Russia and Ukraine. Russia now carrying out airstrikes near Ukraine's border with Poland, NATO territory, folks, getting very close. So that continues to heat up. We'll have more updates on that during the coming week. But for today, the Iranian regime, with a major attack against U.S. interest in Iraq overnight. Now, this happened in the middle of the night, early this morning, U.S. time, Sunday, March 13th. The Iranian regime fired at least 12 precision ballistic missiles from Iran, from northern Iran, into Erbil in northern Iraq. Of course, that is part of Iraqi Kurdistan. It is an autonomous zone there in northern Iraq, and the Kurds have been great friends of the United States and the West over the years. These missiles targeted the Kurdish capital of Erbil. In particular, there is a large U.S. consulate. It's unmanned right now, but it is under construction. That is in Erbil. We also have a U.S. military base at Erbil International Airport. Well, it's unclear what exactly the Iranians were targeting because, thankfully, there were no casualties, no one was injured, no one was killed in this direct attack from Iranian soil. But the missiles reportedly fell awful close to that U.S. consulate and near the airport as well. And we know that they also struck a TV network, Kurdistan 24, who do really good work. One of these missiles, at least one of them, struck their studios as well. So a potentially deadly and nasty attack, and we'll have the video for you tomorrow on Monday's newscast, but major explosions in Erbil as a result of these ballistic missiles fired by Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps into the Kurdish capital of Erbil. Those are the details first. Now we're going to break it down with some analysis and what it means in a broader sense. And will America respond? Even more importantly, perhaps, will the U.S. continue to try to negotiate this disastrous Iran nuclear deal with a regime that is directly attacking American interest in real time? More on that in a minute, but let's get the comment here. The claim of responsibility today, clear claim of responsibility. The Iranian regime saying, yeah, we did it on all of their various media outlets. This is a statement from the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, the IRGC, on their official website. Quote, a strategic center for conspiracy and mischiefs of the Zionists was targeted by powerful precision missiles fired by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. Now, you may be scratching your head and saying, wait a minute, Stakelbeck, I thought you said these missiles were fired near the U.S. consulate in Erbil, near the U.S. military base in Erbil. Why is the IRGC, which again is the elite vanguard of the Iranian regime, they answered directly to the supreme leader? I compare them to the Gestapo, the Nazi Gestapo during World War II, but perhaps even more powerful is the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps. They have a hand in everything in the regime, including the nuclear program. So you might be asking, I thought the U.S. was targeted in Iraq last night. Why are they talking about Israel and the Zionists? Well, for years, the Iranian regime has said that there are, quote, secret Mossad, Israeli Mossad bases operating in Erbil in northern Iraq. And now they're saying they targeted those Zionist centers in Erbil. It's all about Israel, according to the Iranian regime. These missile strikes from Iran last night, which, by the way, were a major deal on a lot of levels, which I'll unpack in a minute. But remember, folks, usually we're reporting here in the newscast on a pretty regular basis that the Iranian regime, through its proxies, in particular those Iraqi Shia militias in Iraq, is carrying out attacks in places like Erbil. This isn't the first time that Erbil was targeted, or the airport, or the U.S. military base there. There have been rockets fired there over the years, drones, especially in particular over the past year. Iran acting through proxy. In this case, overnight, major deal. Iran directly acting here. Those missiles were fired by Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps from Iranian soil, and then they claimed responsibility. They puffed their chest out and said, yeah, we did it. What's going on here? Well, number one, if you go back in our archives here on the newscast from earlier this week, and while you're there, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time we post a new update, even on Sunday when news breaks. Go back in our archives earlier this week, and you will know that Iran has been vowing revenge for an Israeli airstrike last weekend, last Sunday or Monday night, I believe, near the Syrian capital of Damascus. Now, these Israeli strikes reportedly eliminated 2 top officials from Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps. Now, you might be asking, why is the IRGC, why are Iranians operating inside Syria? Good question. As we outlined here for the past several years on the newscast, Iran is determined to establish that forward base in Syria at Israel's doorstep from which it can launch attacks against Israel. A red line, obviously, for Israel, and they've been acting hundreds and hundreds of strikes against Iran and Hezbollah inside Syria over the past few years. So these 2 IRGC officials were eliminated by Israel. Iran has been vowing revenge over the past week, and now we have these missiles fired overnight, and a claim that they were directed towards, quote, secret Zionist bases in Iraqi Kurdistan. Very interesting. So could Iran now said, hey, we carried out our revenge attack for those IRGC officials who were killed. This counts as our revenge, because Iran will never let an attack go unanswered. And a part of this as well, speaking of which, is the death of Qasem Soleimani. Yes, January 2020, over 2 years ago, but the Iranian regime is still obsessed with attaining revenge for his death, which happened on Iraqi soil at Baghdad International Airport. This weekend actually marks Qasem Soleimani's birthday. So perhaps the timing is not a coincidence as well. But remember, the United States, not Israel, carried out that Soleimani strike in January 2020. It was ordered by President Trump. So you have to think that part of this strike overnight is vengeance against the United States, even though Iran is playing a double game here, saying, hey, we were aiming at Israel in Iraqi Kurdistan, but it was directed near U.S. interest in the country, which brings us to the second piece. And by the way, this revenge motive might not be over for Iran. We may see more, God forbid, in the coming days. Israel has been on high alert after the death of these 2 IRGC officials. But folks, another thing to keep in mind here, the Iran nuclear deal. Now, it is apparently on pause right now, which is interesting. We've been reporting here in the newscast that that thing has been basically ready to go. U.S. officials, the Biden administration, Europe, they're ready. They want to make this thing a reality, sadly. But now there's been a pause because Russia is saying, remember, it's Russia, China, the U.S., Britain, France, and Germany in Vienna, meeting with Iranian diplomats, trying to revive this disastrous Iran nuclear deal. And Russia is saying, hey, wait a minute, hit the brakes. We are getting sanctioned severely right now because of our invasion of Ukraine. We want to make sure, if we put this deal together with Iran, that we are still able to do business with Iran, that these sanctions don't affect our business relationship with Iran. So there's a pause right now. So this Iranian missile strike overnight, could it be tied to Vienna? Is Iran saying, you better come back to the table and give us what we want, the United States? Or are they saying, you know what, we're done with the talks in Vienna? I would think that Iran does want this deal because it's very beneficial, sadly, for the Iranian regime. We can discuss this more in the newscast during the week about all the benefits Iran will reap. And let's start with tens of billions of dollars in sanctions relief, a unilateral move by the West, a suicidal move by the U.S. and the West towards the Iranian regime. But the big question here as I close, will the U.S. respond? Clearly, Iran, with these attacks over the past several months, usually through proxy, but now directly against U.S. interests in Iraq and Syria. We've had several of these attacks in recent months as well. Is Iran saying, time for you to go, America, get out of the Middle East. We saw what happened in Afghanistan. Now we want to push you out of Iraq and Syria as well. Certainly, there is a major, major element to that as well. And the Biden administration, now the ball is in its court. Will they continue to try and revive this Iran deal with a regime that is openly Essentially, this is an act of war, firing missiles at a U.S. consulate. And the Biden administration is going to countenance that and not respond and continue to keep these talks going in Vienna, which will only prop up, empower, and strengthen the Iranian regime. We shall see, folks, in the coming days. Will there be a response from the United States? Obviously, they are preoccupied with the Ukraine situation. Iran knows that very well, and Iran is saying, hey, we're still here, and there's nothing you can do about it, America. That's the attitude of the Iranian regime towards the Biden White House. The first thing that should be done is the Biden White House should say, we're out. We are out of these talks. It's over. No new Iran nuclear deal. We are walking away from the table. But folks, I have a feeling that might not happen because we've seen several of these attacks, these provocations by the Iranian regime and its proxies towards U.S. interest over the past several months. And the Biden administration doggedly keeps coming back to the negotiating table and saying, please, Iran, we'll give you whatever you want. Just don't hurt us. I'm sad to say, as a proud American, that has been the negotiating position of the U.S. government over the past few months with the Iranian regime. Folks, appeasement never works. And we are in the midst now of one of the worst acts of appeasement I can recall in the foreign policy realm. For an attack like we saw this weekend, for there to be no response. And not only that, a reward via the Iran nuclear deal is a disaster that America and the West will have a very hard time moving on from, because it is going to lead, they think it's going to do the opposite. It's going to lead to peace in our time. It's going to lead to war in the Middle East. We'll continue to have any new details on this Iranian missile attack against U.S. interest in Iraq over the course of the week. Until then, thanks so much for joining us here today on a special Sunday newscast. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.